Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakumullah khair for tuning in. This is Imam Azeez. And inshallah, we're going to be starting the Friday spiritual talk, our virtual khutbah that we have every Friday, inshallah, in just a minute. Please do share the video. We are streaming on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. So inshallah, if you host a watch party, or share the video with friends and your acquaintances on Facebook, the benefit inshallah will spread that way. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. Jazakumullah khair for tuning in. And inshallah, again, we start in just a few seconds with the grace of Allah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thank Him for the endless blessings that He has bestowed upon each and every one of us. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to extend His peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to include the Prophet's family and descendants, his companions and followers, and each and every one of us in those blessings. Allahumma ameen. My dear brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are all staying safe and sound in these difficult times. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you the strength to cope with the ongoing challenges of the coronavirus pandemic. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve our ummah, our community, and the entire world from this disease sooner than later. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give healing and shifa to those who are struggling with the disease. And I ask Allah to accept those who passed as shuhada. Ameen, ameen, ameen. Brothers and sisters, recently I came across a beautiful narrative about the Prophet's childhood that truly inspired me, filled my heart with nostalgia and the desire to see Rasulullah alayhi salatu wassalam. Every time, not every time, but at least frequently, when we would experience that nostalgia towards the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam, we would just go and perform Umrah. Now that Umrah is suspended and Hajj is no longer a possibility, according to most of the announcements that are being made, one does not know how to quell that pain in the heart when we want to say Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah and we want to visit the Prophet's mosque in Medina. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us to regain that opportunity and that honor soon, Ya Rabb, Ameen. I was reading this narrative about the Prophet's childhood, alayhi salatu wassalam. And it talks about the years in which he spent with Abu Talib, his uncle, his beloved uncle Abu Talib. And Abu Talib, as you may know, had a pretty huge family. I mean, in many narrations, he had about 12 sons and 6 daughters. So you're talking about maybe 18 cousins that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was living with. One of the incredible things that Abu Talib said once is that when my kids woke up in the morning, they looked untidy. They did not look neat. Their faces looked weird. Their hair was all over the place, right? Like most children. But then he would say that when Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, he was a child at the time. He was not a prophet. ولكن كان محمد إذا قام ممشط الشعر مدهون. When Muhammad ﷺ woke up from his sleep, his hair would be properly combed and would be properly oiled as well. Looks beautiful and neat. I always, say to my children, when they wake up, don't come downstairs, until you've done your chores, you've gone to the bathroom, you've made wudu, you've washed your face, you've taken care of yourself, right? And then you come to me. The Prophet ﷺ would always wake up in the morning looking beautiful, alayhi salatu wassalam. And then in another narration, Abu Talib actually says that every time we would sit down and eat, of course the kids are snatching food from each other's hands, they're fighting over food, right? You know how kids are. But Muhammad would not engage in this behavior. So I would have to spare some food for him so that the rest of the kids, and by the way, the rest of the kids are Abu Talib's kids, right? And Muhammad is his nephew. But he would spare a little food and he would give that food to the Prophet ﷺ when he was a child to make sure that he actually eats. And then Abu Talib says something really incredible. He says that when Muhammad is not with us, we usually run out of food. The food is just not enough for us, for all of us. And when Muhammad is with us, there is always more food than we can handle. So I will always say to my children, right, لا تأكلوا حتى يأتي محمد. Do not eat until Muhammad joins us, because he brings his barakah with him, right? When I thought about this, I realized how difficult it must have been for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for little Muhammad, right? He's not alone, but he's relatively lonely. His parents passed away. He doesn't have any siblings, and so he has to basically live with his uncle and his cousins. And although they probably, most of them at least, loved him a lot, but I mean, think about it. It was still different, right? It was still different. He was well taken care of by his mother after his mother, Ayman, as he often told her, "Anti ummi ba'da ummi." May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless her, Ayman, who took care of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he was a child. "Anti ummi ba'da ummi." You are my mother after my mother, right? Who lived in the household of Abu Talib, right? Or Abu Talib's wife herself, Fatima bint Asad, right? She was the mother of Ali ibn Abi Talib, loved him, and she took care of him, right? But still, no one can give you the same love and affection that your own parents would give you, right? And he lived in the house of Abu Talib pretty much from the age of 8 onwards until he became an adult, pretty much until he got married to Khadija, radiallahu anha. But then, the Prophet's challenges started even earlier. Where was he before he lived with his uncle Abu Talib, right? Remember, he was in his grandfather's house, Abdul Muttalib. And Abdul Muttalib was an honorable man. And he too had so many children, but remember, he was up there in age. He was an elderly man. And Muhammad ﷺ, at this point, he was really, really young, right? He was like 5 or 6 years old. And so most, if not all, of the sons and daughters of Abdul Muttalib, all the uncles and aunts of Muhammad, والسلام, they had already gotten married and moved out, and they live with their own families, right? So who was the Prophet ﷺ living with pretty much between the age of 6 and the age of 8? The 2 years in which he spent at Abdul Muttalib's house, he was living with his elderly grandfather and his elderly step-grandmother, right? Hala. Because Abdul Muttalib married Hala after his first wife, Fatima bint Umar, who is the Prophet's paternal grandmother, passed away. So Abdul Muttalib remarried Hala, and Hala also loved him a lot, but life was very different for those 2 years. Think about it, right? In those 2 years, it's quiet, it's silent. Grandpa and step grandma, they're kind of elderly, right? Very different. So literally, 2 individuals in their 60s or 70s and a little child that is, 5 years old, 6 years old, right? They lived with he lived with his grandfather and his step grandmother. Very different life, very quiet, very simple. The common denominator between those two lives, though, is that he did what he was told. He was a child, right? His uncle Abu Talib says, "Let's go to Yemen." He goes to Yemen. Let's go to Damascus. He goes to Damascus. Go and herd my goats and sheep. He goes and he herds his goats and sheep. Right. Same with his uncle Abdul Muttalib. Come attend this meeting in Mecca at Darul Nadwa with me. He goes with him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He's a child. He did not have a choice. Right. He's being moved literally. Without his will. He's not against it, but without his will, he's being moved from one household to the other. Right. But then what was happening before he moved with his with Abdul Muttalib, with his grandfather? Pretty much between the age of 2 and the age of 6, right? He was with his mother, Amina bint Wahb. Amina, who was originally from Yathrib, soon to be Medina. And the strangest thing, when his father passed away, instead of Amina moving with her parents, back in Yathrib, she actually chose to stay in Mecca, because this is how much she loved Mecca, and this is how much she loved her in-laws, right? So for those 4 years, he stayed with his mother. Very different life. The love and intimate compassion of your mom is very different from anything you'd ever experience, right? Muhammad, come with me. We're going shopping. He goes with her. Muhammad, let's go travel, to Yathrib in order to visit your uncles, and your maternal grandparents. He goes with her. Muhammad, let's, go sell something at the marketplace. He goes with her, right? Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam moves from one household to the other, right? Does it end there? No, it doesn't. Where was he in the first 2 years of his life, alayhi salatu wasalam? Right? He was not with his mother or his grandfather or his uncle. Where was he? Right? Remember your seerah. The first 2 years of the Prophet's life, he was with Halima, radiallahu anha. Right? Halima, that lady that nursed him, that took care of him. But where did Halima live? She lived in this, desert tent in the middle of nowhere, right? No civilization, no city, nothing. And he was basically surrounded by strangers. Halima and her husband and their kids and other kids that Halima was nursing. Very, very different life, drastically different. I wonder sometimes, the Prophet ﷺ growing up did not have a childhood like most of us. He was not raised by both of his parents, the nurturing love of mom and dad, surrounded by his own siblings, brothers and sisters that he nags all the time, and they nag him all the time, and they fight over food and stuff, right? He did not have that kind of life, alayhi salatu wassalam. He moved from one household to the other, from one household to the other. Every household brings an entirely, drastically different experience to Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, right? And I wondered about this, why, these types of transitions, when you think about it in our modern times, would lead kids to like foster home to foster home, foster parents to foster parents, raised by his uncle, raised by his grandfather. I mean, think about it. Usually in our modern times, what does that do to kids, right? Kids would join gangs, they would become antisocial, or to say the least, they would become very obnoxious, right? But Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, all of this, all it did to him was to increase him in insight, to increase him in contemplation, to increase him in compassion, to increase him in pondering upon himself and the world, right? What is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was trying to instill in the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Being, involuntarily moved from one household to the other, being told what to do, right? All the time, having very little control over his own affairs, right? For so many years of the forming years of his childhood, right? Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to instill in his heart that no matter how much you think that you are in control of your own existence, at the end of the day, it is only the creator of the universe that truly, truly manages your affairs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to instill in the Prophet's heart, at the very early forming stages of his life, the act of worship that we call in Islam at-taslim. And what is taslim? Taslim is when we surrender ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is when we put as much effort as possible in our lives and daily efforts and daily endeavors But then ultimately we know that this universe has its own manager, has its own controller, has its own owner, and it's certainly not us. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The art of taslim, the act of worship, the often forgotten act of worship that is taslim, surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is what I wanted to talk to you about today, brothers and sisters. And this is really at the very heart of the faith that Muhammad was about to champion a few years later in his life. It's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling him the very heart of Islam itself, the faith, the religion of Islam is taslim, is to surrender yourself to Allah. And think about it, right? Like if you ask someone today, what does it mean to be Muslim? They'll say what? They'll say, well, we pray 5 times a day and fast and do Hajj and all this. Well, these are the rituals of Islam. But what is Islam? Well, Islam is when you believe in God and you believe in the angels and you believe in the hereafter. And so well, this is the creed of Islam. What is Islam? Islam is surrender. Islam is when you surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You surrender to the Creator. You understand the limitations of your human efforts and your endeavors. In the Quran, Allah speaks of Ibrahim alayhi salam. What does he say, right? وَمَنْ يَرْغَبُ عَنْ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِهَ نَفْسَهُ. Only the foolish of mind strays from the path of Ibrahim. To this day, only the foolish of mind strays from the path of monotheism, right? Only the foolish of mind strays from the path of monotheism. وَمَنْ يَرْغَبُ عَنْ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِهَ نَفْسَهُ وَلَقَدِ اصْطَفَيْنَاهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا. Allah says, we have handpicked him. We've selected him. He is the choicest of choices, Ibrahim alayhi salam. وَلَقَدِ اصْطَفَيْنَاهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَإِنَّهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ لَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. And in the hereafter, he will be amongst the most righteous. إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلِمْ. His Lord commanded him, Ya Ibrahim, Aslim, become Muslim. قَالَ أَسْلَمْتُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. He said, I have become Muslim to the Lord of the worlds. Wait. What does that mean? Ibrahim, the prophet, who was selected by Allah, who is amongst the righteous, whose path only the foolish of mind strays from, Allah is still asking him to become Muslim. Isn't he already Muslim? See? Maybe he's Muslim by faith. But what Allah is asking him is not to become Muslim. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking him is to surrender. Ya Ibrahim, surrender. He was telling him this at an early stage. Why? Because he was preparing him for what comes next. Ya Ibrahim, your life is about to become a roller coaster. And all types of challenges are going to come your way. And you need to realize that there is a limit to your human efforts. That ultimately you need to submit. That you are going to move from Iraq to Palestine to Egypt, back to Palestine, and take your wife and child and dump them in the middle of the desert, and then come back and then go back years later in order to take the life of your own son, and I will spare you, just an inch before you actually do the deed. See the roller coaster that was Ibrahim's life? What is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling him? Ibrahim, you are not in control. I still want you to put the effort, but I want you to realize that you need to surrender to the one that actually is in control. And the challenge is, a lot of people would take these words and say, you know what? It's what I don't like about people of faith. They just put everything in the hands of their imaginary God. It's an excuse for laziness, for not putting effort, for not using your mind and using your hands and using science and technology. Whoa. Where'd you get that impression? Where do you get that impression? None in what we're saying here. Surrendering to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not mutually exclusive with taking advantage of the means at your disposal. Who said that? The word aql, right, which means mind or reason, was mentioned in the Quran about 50 times in the exact word. And it was mentioned in the Quran over 300 times in derivative and synonym. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites you to investigate. He invites you to use your mind. He invites you to examine the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah tells us, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in the creation of heavens and earth, and the alternation of day and night. وَالْفُلْكِ الَّتِي تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ بِمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ, and the ships that are sailing at sea, carried by the water, and they're so heavy, carrying on board all types of benefits to people. وَمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مِن مَاءٍ, and the beautiful rain that comes down from the skies. فَيُحْيِي بِهِ اللَّهُ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا, and it basically brings the earth back to life after it has been dead. وَبَثَّ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ دَابَّةٍ, and all the creatures and the creation that roams the earth. وَبَثَّ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ دَابَّةٍ وَتَصْرِيفِ الرِّيَاحِ, and the blowing of the wind. وَتَصْرِيفِ الرِّيَاحِ وَالسَّحَابِ الْمُسَخَّرِ بَيْنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ, and the clouds that are suspended between the skies and the earth. لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites you to examine the signs of the universe, the beautiful creation of Allah, and use your mind. But at the same time, He wants you to realize this, that our five senses are still limited by the realities of the physical world. All this world in which we live, that lies and resides within our perception, is called عالم الشهادة, the world of what can be witnessed by human perception. But that's not the only world out there. There's another world that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran. What does Allah call Himself? عالم الغيب والشهادة الكبير المتعال. He is the one that has knowledge of the realm of the unseen, the domain that lies beyond human understanding and perception, and whatever that lies within the realm of human perception. These are two different worlds. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us in the Quran that it's not only okay, it is actually required for you to use your aql, to use your mind, to negotiate with and investigate the secrets of the physical world. And the physical world is the world that we experience every single day, right? This is the world that our five senses can perceive and touch and process. But at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that that's not the only world out there. There's another world, and the other world, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has knowledge of that world. Your five senses, your aql, can simply not process the realities of that world, right? Now, in terms of proportion, which world is bigger than the other, right? You know, in the hadith, again, we're not making anything up. ما الدنيا في السماء الأولى إلا كحبة في قطا. The parable of this earth and all the world compared to the first cosmic system, right? السماء الأولى is that of a sand speck in a desert. That's what the Prophet ﷺ teaches us. عالم الشهادة, the world that can be witnessed by human perceptions, is literally this small compared to عالم الغيب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows both and He controls both, but we only know عالم الغيب, right? And that's why when I think of the coronavirus pandemic, I say to myself and I say to you, we are required as a human community to use our ingenuity, to use our intelligence, our science and technology to find a cure, and we will inshallah find a cure, to find a vaccine, and we will inshallah ta'ala find a vaccine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to use our effort, our human effort, to understand and to process and to develop solutions, right? And we will inshallah develop solutions. We have to be careful. We have to maintain social distancing. And by the way, brothers and sisters, it is working. In the cities, in the states in which social distancing is being practiced, it is working. And there are places in this country that are about to actually flatten the curve, as they say. With the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is working. Just fix this. With the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, human efforts are making a difference, right? But the problem is that when we say that human beings are trying their hardest, and that Bismillah. Sorry about that. When we say that human beings are required to use their efforts and science and technology in order to actually uncover the secrets of the physical world and come up with solutions to ongoing problems, such as the coronavirus pandemic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also wants us to practice taslim right now and surrender to the things that we don't know. Surrender to the facts of the universe that we do not know. Surrender to the simple truth, and that is we don't know the wisdom behind all of this. We don't know the wisdom. There's no way our minds can process the wisdom. And here's what I'm noticing, and this is really quite ironic, right? And that is most human beings, although we are very different from each other, cultures and nations and civilizations, but most of us are actually practicing taslim right now, aren't we? We are practicing it voluntarily or forcibly. It's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told heavens and earth, "I'tiya taw'an aw karha qalata atayna ta'i'in." Right? Come under my sway, forcibly or voluntarily. They both said, "Lord, we will come voluntarily." Right? There's no need to use force on us. We're here, Lord. There's nowhere else to go. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown us, this incredible reality that is inescapable, that most human beings are actually practicing taslim right now. I mean, some of us are in a lab somewhere, trying to develop a vaccination, or trying to develop a cure. There's some politicians that are working very sincerely in order to contain this thing. Law enforcement, healthcare professionals, right? But the vast majority, the absolute vast majority of human beings, what are they doing right now? They're sitting at home. They're surrendering completely to the will of Allah, and they're waiting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cause this whole thing to go away. Suddenly, we've all become believers. Suddenly, we're all waiting for the unseen power of God, for the unseen hand of God to interfere and, to get rid of this thing with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That's what I'm noticing, and that is the irony. That's what I'm talking to you about today, the idea of taslim, to surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here's the thing, this is how I want to conclude my talk today. And that is, we are so different and diverse and disparate as human beings, right? We are so different from each other. I always love this exercise to think about what people are talking about in their own social media accounts and feeds, right? If you compare what people in South America are talking about, or people in Africa are talking about, or people in Asia, or people in Europe, or people in America, and what they're talking about and the types of conversations they're having, very, very different. The political conversations, the cultural conversations, the types of food, the videos that they share, the songs that they listen to, the local conflicts, war, politics, all of that. It is all very, very different, using different languages, different perspectives, different angles, right? We are such a disparate species. But this is perhaps the first time in human history where all of humanity, every single one of us, of every faith, ideology, philosophy, age, race, every single one of us is at home, and the only conversation that we're all having right now is what? Is the coronavirus pandemic. I can't remember another time in human history when one singular conversation was at the center of every human existence. I can't think of any parallel to this. But right now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused us to be in that state of surrender. We're all at home, and that's all we're talking about. In fact, this is the subject of the talk today as well. What do we make of this, brothers and sisters? As we practice this taslim at home, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَتَرَى كُلَّ أُمَّةٍ جَاثِيَةٍ, you see that the nations on the day of judgment will be on their knees. You know what? We're on our knees right now. We're at home, but we're on our knees. Doing what? Surrendering to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hopefully voluntarily, right? Witnessing the truth unfold. And I want you to remember my words. The truth is not the coronavirus. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the coronavirus to be the object by which He brings our attention. He grabbed our attention. And sometimes that's what it takes. An earth-shattering catastrophe, the convulsions of catastrophe. Sometimes that's what it takes to get someone's attention. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already has our attention, because every single one of us, we are surrendering, we are in a state of taslim, we are at home, we are on our knees, and we have one singular conversation, and that is the coronavirus, right? In order for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do what? I don't know. I don't know. That is yet to be revealed. That is not something that my aql can process. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows this. But what I know for sure, brothers and sisters, is that the world is not going to be the same. We are going to look at our own children differently, hopefully positively, after this whole thing is over. We are going to look at our relationships differently. We're going to look at consumerism differently, at careers differently, at culture differently, at movies and songs, arts and entertainment differently. We're going to look at politics differently. We're going to look at our priorities differently. Brothers and sisters, a brother was telling me the other day, hugs and kisses have become a weapon. And staying away from people has become an act of love. The very definitions of what makes human society are evolving. Something is at work. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using this opportunity, brothers and sisters, to bring our attention to facts, truth, and realities that were staring us in the face, but we were so distracted to see. Now that we are in a state of surrender, most of us have surrendered physically because they're at home. And this talk is inviting you to surrender at the level of your heart as well, because you're a Muslim. And a Muslim needs to surrender at both of those two levels. And I guarantee it, the minute your heart calms down and surrenders and accepts the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and realizes your limitations, you'll be able to see. You'll be able to see the changes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is causing in our life, in our entire collective human civilization. This is a historic moment that has no precedence in history, brothers and sisters. And while I know that this whole thing is going to be over, and I know that the virus will be cured and will be, inshallah ta'ala, people will be cured and the virus is going to become history. I know that, but I also know that the face of human society will be very, very different after this whole thing is over. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it'll change to the better. Jazakumullahu khair for tuning in. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all of you to stay safe and sound. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring taslim, submission and surrender into our hearts. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cure the ill and to protect the healthy. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be there with our brothers and sisters as they struggle financially, those who do. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us instruments of helping them. I ask Allah to preserve our institutions, our masjid, our places of worship, our livelihoods, to preserve our families. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our community and to bring relief to the world. Allahumma ameen. اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. تقبل منا يا ربنا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم اشفنا شفاء تاما وعافنا معافاة تامة. اللهم ارحمنا واحفظنا من المرض يا رب العالمين. اللهم ارحمنا واحفظنا من المرض يا رب العالمين. اللهم ارحمنا واحفظنا من المرض يا رب العالمين. اللهم يا خفي الألطاف نجنا مما نخاف. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك نستغيث. أصلح لنا شأننا كله ولا تكلنا لأنفسنا طرفة عين ولا أقل من ذلك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Let me share with you, inshallah, some announcements before I let you guys go and pray dhuhr on your own at home. Hopefully, inshallah, jama'ah with your families. Tarbiyah is now fully live. All of our programs, alhamdulillah, are now on social media. Please visit live.tarbiya.org in order to learn more about what we're doing. It's a lot of beautiful and exciting things, inshallah, that you're going to love if you haven't visited already. Tonight, inshallah, at 7:30, Tafsira will cover the fourth session of Surah Yusuf. So join us again on across platforms, inshallah, for the fourth session of Surah Yusuf. This will be followed at 9 p.m. by the Sunnah sessions with Imam Kamran. So inshallah, tune in for that as well. Our wellness webinars are at 5:30 p.m. every Sunday and Wednesday. And our Sunday school team continues to add new details to the virtual Sunday. Even our Sunday school, alhamdulillah, is now virtual. And if you are interested or have any questions, please call our number 916-800-4111. Story time with Brother Yusuf Nawabi will stream live, inshallah, on Monday at 3 p.m. for all the young children in the community. So again, if you're a parent and you have a young little kid, please tune in to any of our social media platforms for a live story time with Brother Yusuf at 3 p.m. this coming Monday, inshallah. And for all youth, join our Young Adults Book Club that starts next week. This is Tuesday, April 7th at 3 p.m. as well, inshallah. Last but not least, for those of you who would like to volunteer, join the Rahma Unleashed WhatsApp group. You can text your name and your information to Tarbiya's number 916-800-4111. This way we have volunteers. If any of our community members needed food or needed medications or grocery shopping or whatever, we do it on their behalf and we safely drop it off at their doorsteps. We've been doing this, alhamdulillah, with many families, and it has been a beautiful way, inshallah, for us to volunteer and give back and serve. And please remember to continue to support your institution. You can follow the Venmo link in the descriptions. You can still make a contribution to Tarbiyah even if you're still at home. And please consider sponsoring a prayer space. Very soon, inshallah, our masjid will be ready, and we're going to be ready for it to move back, inshallah, when all of this is over. Jazakumullah khairan for tuning in. May Allah reward you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.